Hi, everybody. It's Tara from Sojourn Psychology, and I am here with another one of my friends who just happens to be a colleague. This is Tony Zerbin, and Tony is just finishing up his master's in psychology at City University. Tony and I have known each other over the years because we end up meeting up in these somatic uh, body working trainings. So Tony, if you could take a moment here and just explain to us what actually is somatic therapy.
Sure. Okay. So it's a big word, comes from the Greek language, literally just means body. And a big part of what somatic psychotherapy is about is how do we connect our mind and our body so that they're on the same page and that we're not getting overwhelmed by our thoughts or by the feelings that we're having inside our bodies. So, I
Cool.
mean, a lot of what we can talk about with somatic psychotherapy is this idea of embodiment. How do we get back in tune with what's going on inside of us when we have things like panic attacks or big emotions? These things don't just happen inside of our heads, they actually happen inside of our bodies. We're a connected nervous system from head to toe. So, a lot of the work is about saying, hey, let's get familiar with that. And as we start getting familiar with it, we can actually start building mastery over the different sensations and emotions we have in our body.
Yeah, that's so interesting. How I like to think about it is the first place we experience trauma is in our cells. So if we touch a hot stove, the cells in our fingers are starting to send some signals up to our brain, and that's how we know something has happened.
Yep,
And then it's really interesting to consider the somatic experience just in this global crisis and the pandemic.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, when we talk about, say, dealing with stress, we talk about dealing with pandemic. The thing is, a big word in somatic psychotherapy is what are your resources? I mean, all psychotherapy. But when we're talking about resources, even from a somatic lens, is how is your body handling all the stress, and how is that stress on your body affecting how your brain's working, how your nervous system's working, how you're handling all the sensations, all the emotions that's going on at that time.
Right. That's interesting, especially this term embodied emotion. So
Mhm.
can you give us more information on what that means, our embodied emotion?
Sure. So emotions, in the popular sense, there are many different words we can use to talk about emotions. But when it comes to a lot of the latest research in neuroscience on what emotions are like in the body, there tends to be some, depending which field you're in, a consensus that there's about 7 main emotions that you can embody in your body. And then you can start combining them to have more complex emotions. You add thoughts, and then it gets more complex again. But the basics are happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, shame, uh, and a desire for connection, that impulse that we get to how do we give somebody, want to give them like a hug or a kiss or just hold their hand or put a hand on their back. That's also an emotion that happens inside our body that gets us to reach out. So I think saying that, one of the keys about emotions that I like explaining to clients that I've worked with in practicum and other people that I talk to is the word emotion is really telling. I don't know if the etymology is actually like this, but the way I like explaining it is that it's an emotion. You've got energy that's trying to drive a particular kind of emotion. So let's revisit some of the emotions. Happiness, for example. When you're feeling happiness, the emotion that's happening is let's light up, let's have a smile, let's like expand. We're feeling warmth in our body. We're feeling a freeness, a movement inside. It's easier to breathe. There's energy in our fingers and our toes. We can move more freely. So these are some sensations that come together to build up the experience of the emotion of happiness.
That's really cool, Tony. And it's what's interesting too with all of these emotions is they do exist in our body. So there is just something very purposeful of giving more life force or just awareness to how our emotions sit inside of us. Like you
Mhm.
said, happiness just feels like it creates some space,
Yeah,
whereas shame might sit somewhere else in our body.
exactly.
Yeah, so how would you, like, what could we do if we wanted to become more aware of where our emotions sit in our body, or how to make them come more alive to us?
That's a good question. So a lot of how we raise people in our culture right now is to really focus on our minds and to start ignoring what's happening in our body. There's a lot of emphasis, and I think it's a good thing, on delayed gratification. But when it becomes a way of life that we ignore what's happening in our stomachs, the upset feelings we have, the pains we have in our shoulders to endure all these kinds of things, we get really good at ignoring things. It's an amazing adaptation our brain has. It's like forgetting that we're wearing socks. We don't need to know that all the time. But then how do we get back to it when we need it? So a big key here is focused awareness. And for a lot of people, when you're rebuilding a sense of connecting to your body, we need to start really simple. We need to start with sensations. So touch, like what does this feel like? How would I start describing a texture? Is there warmth in my body? Is there coldness in my body? Is there tension in my body? Or do I feel like an openness, an emptiness? A lack of feeling is also a sensation. So as we become more aware of the sensations, as we start finding words for them, we build a vocabulary for them. From the top down and from the bottom up, our nervous system starts recognizing and reorienting and embodying.
That's really cool. It's so interesting when I hear you talk about just touch. Something that I've noticed since the COVID crisis is all the pressure of hand washing and everything.
Yeah,
But actually, what I find is I really am enjoying just the ritual of actually washing my hands. And I found that it's very soothing for me. I just slowing down and noticing my hands touching each other while I'm lathering with soap.
absolutely. Slowing
And that's
down is the key word.
yeah, I think that's a somatic experience, and I guess that would be something that is maybe alleviating or creating space inside of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is like a whole new field for a lot of people. Just your general experiences. Whoa, what's going on? So like you were saying, the key is, can I slow it down? Can I allow myself to become curious, even of hand washing, the simple things, food, really getting curious, hey, what all is happening for me when I give the person that I'm living with a hug, or when I hear somebody on the phone? What happens? How does my body respond? Do I relax? Do I tense? Just curious and slowing it down.
yeah, and the other piece when we take it to the next level and we talk about food and we talk about garbage in, garbage out from a
Mm-hmm.
somatic experience, it's this idea like our body is a temple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the
Absolutely.
somatic work really highlights like this is a sacred space, and there's all these different emotions that are registering or living.
Absolutely. And how we treat our bodies has a big impact on how we think. I mean, from a personal side of things, my early experience of this was being lactose intolerant. If I eat dairy, it's not usually my stomach that's my first cue that I've eaten something that I shouldn't have. I start getting really anxious and a little bit embarrassed. These are just emotions, no judgment on them. It's just the experience that my body generates. It says, hey, something's not right. Something doesn't feel safe on the inside or the outside. We're not sure exactly where it is. But it's a mental state that happens first. And then later it's like, oh, I've got the upset stomach. Oh, I'm feeling really tender nerves right now. Must have been dairy. But my first cue is my emotional state.
Yeah, that fits from a neurological point of view as well. So there's our emotions and our body is just one more gauge on how we are navigating this difficult time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Tony. And if you want some information on Tony's blogging or different things that Tony's up to, I'll link some of his information below for you guys. Okay, see you, Tony.
All right. Thanks, Tara.
You're welcome.